Hello and welcome to IELLO. Today we are riding the subways in Paris and Rome. We are taking as many passengers as possible to the most beautiful locations. Let's make the best metro line possible and maybe even bring lovers together in their favorite restaurant. In Get On Board Paris and Roma, you collect points for building your metro line and transporting your passengers efficiently. The player with the most points at the end wins the game. Get On Board Paris and Roma is for 1 to 5 players, takes around 30 minutes to play and suits players of 8 years and older. The solo variant has a few new rules that you will find on the separate solo sheet. Solo, you try to beat the score and become the new Minister of Transportation. Place the city map in the middle of the table, with the Rome side up if you play with 1 to 3 players, or Paris if you play with 4 or 5 players. Each player gets a player sheet. Make sure the top part is different for each player. Everyone chooses a color and takes the route markers and the departure pawn. Place 2 random common objectives on the board with the yellow side up. These tell you what you need to collect and how many points you get for it in the end. You also receive a personal objective. Place this face up next to your player sheet. Shuffle all 12 metro tickets if you play the Paris side, or shuffle the tickets with 1 to 6 on them if you play on the Rome map. Deal every player 2 tickets. Each chooses one and places their departure pawn on the assigned station. You can see which one you need from the numbers on the map. Shuffle all 12 metro tickets again and make a face down pile. The oldest player gets the inspector token and starts the game. The inspector starts by revealing the top card and each player crosses off the number at the top of their sheet. Now, starting with the inspector, each player plots a route by placing markers on the board. You want to create the shape that is required by the metro ticket. If there are 2 shapes, you decide which shape you make. There are a few important rules to follow. Start at the space where you ended your last turn. On the first turn, you start at your departure point. Make as many turns as shown on your sheet. You decide for yourself if you want to make a left or right turn. The first marker can make any turn from the marker of the previous round, but this does not count towards the number of turns you have to make this round. There can only be 1 marker per color on each section, and you can never double back on the same section. If you somehow end up running into yourself, you are eliminated from the game, so avoid that at all costs. In this example, you have these 5 options. If you run into trouble, you can change a straight line into a turn or vice versa. Cross off the leftmost circle on this section on your player sheet. At the end of the game, it will cost you the points below each crossed off circle. It is good to make connections with other lines. So if you place your marker on a connection that contains markers from other players, you check 1 space in the connection zone per other marker, starting at the top leftmost circle. In a 2 or 3 player game, you will use the Rome map. This map contains possibilities to get extra checks in the connection zone by using a burgundy or yellow speedy section. Only one of them is speedy, determined by the background color of the first ticket that gets turned over. Mark it here on your player sheet. Whenever you place a marker on this section, you check an extra connection in the connection zone. Next, mark the landmarks and people that you meet on your route. Each scores points differently. Metro entrances. When you get to a metro entrance, put a circle around one of the entrance signs on your player sheet. You don't necessarily have to stop on it to get a circle. At the end of the round, you may cross out 1 encircled sign to place 1 extra marker in any direction. Keep in mind that each encircled sign that is not crossed off will give you 2 points at the end of the game. Grannies. Cross off the topmost open space. The more grannies you cross off, the more points you receive at the end of the game. Students and cinemas. When you reach a student, cross off one of the students. And when you reach a cinema, cross off a cinema. At the end of the game, you multiply the number of students by the number of cinemas for the total score. Flirts and restaurants. Look at the background color of the flirt that you reach. Cross off the first flirt in the topmost unresolved line with that background color. When you reach a restaurant, go back to the topmost row that is not resolved yet. A single flirt at either side of the plus is worth 2 points, and a couple is worth 6 points. Write the total in the last column and scribble out any flirt spaces in that row to indicate that this row is resolved. The next time you encounter a flirt, you start on the next row. When all rows are resolved, you will no longer receive points for new flirts and restaurants. Tourists and landmarks. With each tourist you pass, cross off the leftmost tourist on your top unresolved line. When you stop at a landmark, like an opera or a theater, you score the top line that is unresolved. After that, the line is resolved. Skip this if you don't have tourists in the line when you go through a landmark. The bottom row and the rightmost crossed off tourist show you how many points you get. Write them down and scribble out any remaining tourists in that line to show that the row is resolved. Objectives. First, your personal objectives. If you reach one of the intersections of your personal objective, you can check the next square. Now check the common objective. If any player completed the objective this round, they get 10 points. Mark them here. Turn the objective card over to the blue side. If any player completes this objective in a later round, they get 6 points. The inspector token goes to the next player and a new round begins by turning a new ticket face up. Unless you have just finished the 12th round and the metro ticket deck is empty. In that case, it is time to get your final score and see who won the game. Count your final score by adding up each zone. You can use the boxes on your player sheet. Each metro entrance that you did not cross off is worth 2 points. Add all the grannies that you checked for the total. Multiply the number of students with the number of cinemas that you crossed off. Check the unresolved line with tourists. Divide the points you would have gotten if you had visited an opera or theater and divide them by 2, rounding down. Add this to the points for the resolved rows. Do the same with the flirts and the restaurants. Divide the points for the unresolved row in half and add it to the resolved rows. Look at the last crossed off connection space that provides points and add these points to the total. Add up all the boxes and subtract the negative points from this zone. The player with the highest score wins the game. These are all the rules for Get On Board Paris and Roma. Enjoy playing and we hope to see you next time in a new video for IELLO. Bye!